All right, you checking in with Mike Williams from the LA Chargers, and you're tuning in to Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Daiyan Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. If this is your first time tuning in the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. See what happens, Dan, when it's not a live show. I can get through that intro just fine without any flubs. Mm-hmm. Today works. No promises for the next time that we do a live show. Just be prepared. Be prepared. But in terms of getting prepared, the Chargers held their mandatory minicamp throughout the course of this week. Lots to get into as far as practice nuggets, comments from the podium from both players and coaches alike. Dan Wolkenstein, can you feel it? We're that much closer, not really, to the opening of the NFL season. But let's talk some football. Let's talk some Chargers minicamp today.
Yeah, I definitely can feel it. I think there's a lot more excitement happening in Chargers land now that we're seeing mini camps 1, 2, and 3 in the books, and lots of takeaways from there. You're seeing some rookies shine, some defenders make their marks, and coaching staff really liking what they're seeing. And a one Rashawn Slater in practice. So love to see that, Jake. There's a lot of folks clamoring for this like offensive 2.0 version of Greg Roman's offense, and there's no shortage of weapons now for the Justin Herbert. Oh. And we'll get into all of that. And like Jake mentioned, a lot of the podium takeaways and impactful comments so far. But Jake, before we do that, important question for you. How long are your sleeves and how are you?
Okay, so because Dan has taken note of this the last few shows that we've done, because it has been a hoodie in every single one of our last previous shows. This one in particular, one of my favorites. But they're long.
Full sleeve.
No criticism needed from Daiyan Wolkenstein. No Belichick comparisons today. Get that shit out of here.
Good. And how are you?
I'm just fine, especially after that. I am really good. And I've been really good. And I'm comfortable whether it's a short sleeve, a long sleeve, a cutoff sweatshirt. I don't care.
Yes. You're ready for any weather that comes at you.
That's the appropriate word for it. Yes, that's the appropriate phrase. Mm-hmm.
Jake is there every day for any day in any weather. I love that. Fantastic. Just make sure you wear sunscreen on the next episode. Jake, so lots of things going on here this week. And I think the headline obviously has to be Rashawn Slater coming to minicamp during negotiations, going to the podium, being a part of the promo day, all of it. I think him showing it at the podium, talking about his confidence in the negotiations, knowing it's part of the process. That's obvious. And that's a big, big deal for this Chargers offense and this Chargers team. Clearly, new offensive line looks massive, right? You think about a lot of other storylines, but for me, the biggest one is just the pass catchers that we're seeing at Justin Herbert's disposal that we just haven't seen. And you're seeing like shots fired from Brady Fajoko to other folks on social media when people are chirping LaShawn McCoy, I believe it was. Or no, sorry, Sonny Michel, talking about how Justin Herbert needs to, be more clutch or whatever. And he's throwing to a bunch of, I don't know, I forget what he said, grocery store workers or something. No offense to the grocery store workers if that's what he said, but Justin Herbert's got a ton of more weapons this year. And you're seeing some glow up start to happen with guys like Oronde Gadsden, guys like Tre Harris, Quentin Johnston taking a step up, Mike Williams. You're seeing Omarion Hampton. I mean, it goes down the line. Clearly, Lad McConkey, Tyler Conklin, Najee Harris. It goes on and on and on. And I think that's what this Chargers fan base has been clamoring for. So for me, off the top, you're seeing minicamp. You're seeing those guys in helmets and pads and being like, oh, this is real. This is real life. This is what it feels like.
Yeah, I know it's just minicamp, Dan. I know there's no pads on. But this is what happens when you're starved of football for the better part of just a couple months. Mind you, the draft was only in end of April. And it's essentially been, almost 2 months since then? And you can understand why people need football back more than ever right now. And when you get days of mini camps like this with no pads, nobody hitting each other, nothing but comments from Coach Harbaugh or Coach Minter or Greg Roman or any of the players at the podium, Yeah, we've been waiting for shit like this. Justin Herbert back in form. The new weapons you want to see. Derwin James already essentially in mid-season form based off of a 2 or 3 day minicamp. Yeah, we're starving for football. There's no doubt about it in the middle of June.
Yep. Yeah, we're ready. Jake, I think there's a lot that could be put to rest with some rumors. We talked about the Rashawn Slater stuff. Justin Herbert wearing the sleeve on his leg kind of dispelled some of those rumors as well at the podium when he asked about it, basically saying, just want to keep my leg warm. And I'm sure from Justin's perspective, I would imagine it's like, dude, I'm sick of being injured with some random crap that happens. Like, if it means I got to keep a sleeve on to keep it warm, sure, why not? Like, I'm good. So that's a non-story. You've seen Quentin Johnston get some glow up, seeming like he's gotten better this offseason as well. And, kind of I don't know if it's a Ben Herbert effect or just people dedicated to the system, right? But this Chargers team, you're seeing a lot of folks kind of dedicated, right? And you're seeing a Jamari Sawyer come into shape. You're seeing a Boyd come into shape. You're seeing a Daiyan Johnson kind of dedicated to the craft, and let alone your top 9 guys, right? Like that's besides the point.
It's actually Elite 10.
Oh, yeah. Now Josh Harris.
There's Elite 10. We're this close. He should just go ahead and add Cameron Dicker because we're literally this close to Harbaugh's 11. Let's just make a damn movie about it.
Harbaugh's 11. I like
Harbaugh's 11.
I like that. But I have to take a moment and relish in the news and the views and the videos and the shots of one Oronde Gadsden.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about making an impression right off the jump. I mean, he's getting minutes of shine from Jim Harbaugh at the podium. He's getting crazy production during the camp on the field. You heard it during his discussion when he was drafted, how Jim Harbaugh had an immediate impact ready for him. Oronde Gadsden looks to be kind of one of those, if you know kind of guys. And Justin seems to be finding him pretty quickly.
Yeah, as Daniel Popper wrote in his piece on Wednesday's practice, Oronde Gadsden caught 7 passes in all different areas of the field, was eventually worked up into the starting lineup with Justin Herbert during that part of practice, ended up coming down with a touchdown at some point of this week in practice. And it's just fantastic from the standpoint that here is a guy who was a 5th-round rookie selection in a very good tight end class. Chargers end up trading up for him. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago when we had this list of potential early impact players, whether we're talking guys that have been here for 2 years or coming in as rookies. Oronde Gadsden was on this list based on the standpoint of what that tight end room looks like with Will Dissly, Tyler Conklin, Tucker Fisk. He's got every opportunity to come in and snatch that TE1. And it looks like when you see this in early days of albeit rookie minicamp, it's great signs for a guy who was taken in the 5th round. Not letting the moment be too big for him, just going out and handling his business, but continuing to excel every single opportunity that he's got. Dan, this is your boy. I'll just give you the red carpet moment for you to talk little words here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see why this team traded up for him. And you're already seeing it, right? Like, this Chargers team was desperate for someone who can stretch the field, right? Somebody with hands, somebody that can be athletic, that can bring explosiveness to the tight end position, someone that can bring athleticism to the tight end position. And Justin Herbert could have another weapon that he can use that is not kind of chugging down the line and scratching for a few extra yards. And he's doing something he's not really supposed to be doing, right? Like, Will Dissly last year was not supposed to be tight end 1. I'm sorry, he wasn't. And even he would probably tell you that. You have 2 guys now, and Tyler Conklin and Oronde Gadsden. Long-term, Oronde Gadsden, in my opinion, is your guy. I firmly believe that. And you're seeing his kind of transition from wide receiver to tight end and the production he had. And the only reason why it wasn't insanity even more was because of an injury, which Jim Harbaugh talks about. The guy's got hands, man. He snatches everything. And watch him after the catch. He's going to be Justin Herbert's best friend, safety valve, just like Lad McConkey in no time. Jake, the other part we probably got to talk about is the total package himself. You think Greg Roman is happy about his running back room this year?
I would say so.
Talk about night and day difference going from last year's crew to Najee Harris, Omarion Hampton, Rocket Sanders, Kamani Vidal, Hassan Haskins. Like that's a legit room. That's a legit room. And Greg Roman talked about Omarion Hampton. Lots of coaches talked about Omarion Hampton as kind of a standout, and he's the real deal, total package, division. Him and Najee Harris both getting lots of praise by this Chargers team. They are who we have not had. And I'm excited to see what this Chargers team can do with them.
I like how you phrase it. They are who we have not had. Yes. Now, on top of Omarion Hampton coming in, you hear Jim Harbaugh talk about he and Najee Harris are like two peas in the pod, is how he phrased it. Greg Roman said specifically of Najee Harris that he's been extremely impressive for how quickly that he's been able to pick everything up, and just his mindset for the game coming in as a veteran and obviously going to be the leader of this young group that's now there. But damn, it seems like Omarion Hampton's like kind of the obvious. Like it shouldn't really surprise anybody that we're hearing this. But at the same time, much like you said about like a Rondé Gatson or things that we've been hearing from Tre Harris, it seems like there's been like a little bit more flair for the plays that they're making. And Omarion Hampton, and this will probably end up becoming a much bigger aspect of the news around him by the time that we end up getting into training camp and obviously going through the preseason. It seems like it's just, no pun intended, it's the calm before the storm for a Rondé Gatson, or excuse me, for Omarion Hampton. So it's interesting just to hear like how good things are going for him, but you're just waiting to see like those explosive plays. Once the pads come on, let's see it. Once preseason comes, let's see it. Not to say that it's not going to happen. I think we're just all waiting for it.
Yeah, and honestly, I apologize for the technical difficulties for those watching on YouTube. I think it was Daniel Popper that may have said it. Maybe it was Brett Coleman that said it to us when we were talking to him this offseason. But I firmly believe that the floor has been what has been raised so
Brett
high.
Coleman said that. Build the floor to lift the ceiling.
Yeah, and you think about like the floor of this year with a Mekhi Becton addition to the offensive line, right? You think about a floor now with Tre Harris, KLS, Mike Williams, all added to this wide receiving core, right? You bring in Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris. Like, what's the floor? It's pretty high, right? The floor of your tight end room now with Tyler Conklin and a Rondé Gatson. Like, the floor has been raised, right? Like, you have so much more depth and so much more opportunity and possibilities, right, with this team. And any week you can see somebody going off, and you wouldn't be surprised, really. And that's just talking offense. You haven't even talked defense yet. You hear them talk about the defensive line. Them talking about the defensive line is going to be better than it was last year, more versatile than it was last year, bigger than it was last year. That's without Joey Bosa. That's without Poona Ford. You bring in Deshaun Hand, you bring in Jones, you bring in Jamar Caldwell. Like, your defensive line looks to be pretty good. But Jake, I think the other part that has people maybe in their feelings a little bit is the whole center left guard thing.
Mm.
Where do you fall on this with Zion Johnson, Bozeman running it back? Are they going to actually be center guard? Like, where do you sit on this?
Look, during our last live show, I said it was by the time we get to week one, it's either going to be one of two possibilities. It's either going to be a combination of Bradley Bozeman at left guard and Zion Johnson at center, or it's going to be Zion Johnson back at left guard and Andre James is going to be taking center. I do not believe you're going to run it back with the same starting 5 unit with everybody in the same spot that they were last year.
Well, Mekhi Becton.
Save for Mekhi Becton, yes. And look, we've talked about it so much on this show, and maybe it's still kind of getting over the hump to say, look, this team is fully transparent in terms of telling you exactly what they're going to do. And Harbaugh did not shy away in terms of addressing that matter as it relates to Zion at center position or Bradley Bozeman at that center position. And he basically said that everything as it stands right now is progressing just the way that they foresaw it taking place. And I liked how, I believe it was Daniel Popper that forwarded the question to say, when do you ultimately see yourself making that decision on what the starting unit looks like? Mm-hmm. To which Jim Harbaugh had reiterated about 8 to 10 days into camp, he's going to know if it's good, if it needs changes, and ultimately what they're going to do moving forward. So we haven't seen any of Andre James with the starting unit during any of the times of these offseason practices or minicamp. I'm going to assume that as we get closer to training camp and preseason, that he is going to get mixed in there a little bit more. But as of right now, Dan, all odds look like it's leaning towards Zion Johnson at center and Bradley Bozeman being at left guard. I mean, they're not only doubling down, but they have, whether it's Jim Harbaugh or Joe Ortiz or Greg Roman, they're lauding the work that Zion Johnson has put in to make this transition work for him. His athletic capabilities, his film work. Now, whether or not that's going to work, that's obviously time will tell. We can't foresee that at this point in time for a guy that's never played center his entire career. You know, it's like the saying in dodgeball. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. We'll see how it works out for him. But everything as it relates to what Jim Harbaugh and the front office is being transparent and saying right now, it sounds like that's the lead as far as the potential move is going to go by the time that we get to training camp.
I think so. I mean, clearly this coaching staff believes in Zion Johnson at center. Now, whether that is for him to be starting center or to have the versatility, and you heard Justin Herbert talk about this at the podium, where it's nice to have offensive linemen who all can play different positions and have played different positions, understand each other's assignments, right? Like him understanding what it's like as a life of a center. Maybe that helps him with communications at guard. And maybe he's a backup if something happens to Bozeman or James or whatever. But you've heard people talk about him having like a prototypical archetype for center, right? Brains, physique, physicality. It's just putting it together. But it's hard not to, as an optimist generally, like imagine what if Zion Johnson is an elite center, which that's a big jump, right?
Let's pump the brakes on elite. Let's just say
very good, above average, very good. Sure,
yeah,
but let's just say
hope for that.
But like even above average, you'd have taken that last year.
Can't get much worse.
So the offensive line, which I don't know if anybody else picked up on this. We talked about the left side for a bit, but the right side, you know, with the addition of Mekhi Becton, everyone's talking about how big Mekhi Becton, Joe Alt are and all kind of stuff. Did you hear Jim Harbaugh? I want to say it was on the Pat McAfee show when he said, like, I don't think this should be a surprise to anybody, but we're going to be a right-handed team.
I didn't catch this comment.
Yes. And historically, their right hand's kind of been tied behind their back, especially from a run game perspective. And with the addition of Mekhi Becton, it seems like they're going to kind of flip that on its head. And so a year ago, for example, anytime you saw runs to the right, it was either negative yards, maybe a couple, right? Or getting blown up. But everything successfully, for the most part, went through Zion and Rashawn. We're going to see something different this year. And that's because of the offensive line addition, right? But also, it's just a different running game right now. They never had that brute force type that they wanted in Gus Edwards. He just was never healthy or available. You're going to see it. And I thought about this after the press conferences yesterday. You know, you heard it from the previous coaching staff, and you even heard it at times last year about like the identity that this coaching staff wants to portray and embody. And you can want that all you want, But like that stuff just doesn't happen overnight, right? Like that building a bully and medieval play style and physicality, like all of the buzzwords, right? Like winning in the trenches and imposing your will. Yes, that's like the North Star, but you can't just flip a switch, change a couple coaches, and bam, like you're going to get it, right? It takes personnel, right? It takes time. It takes coaching. It takes strength and conditioning, not just in a couple months before the season starts. You add 2 offseason rosters and the changes that come with it. Free agency, NFL draft, Ben Herbert effect for 2 off seasons, right? Jim Harbaugh effect for 2 seasons, Joe Ortiz effect for 2 seasons. Now you're starting to see what this team looks like. And the fun exercise for Chargers fans is to take what Chargers roster looks like in 2025 on Friday the 13th versus what it looked like Friday or whatever the 13th was in 2023. And look how different this Chargers team is and where the strengths and weaknesses are. Historically, this has been a finesse team. And a lot of people thought that was a good thing. Like, it's been a bad thing for the Chargers, tell you that much. Now, they're not. They're kind of the opposite. They used to have all their money tied up in wide receivers, right? There's when the Keenan Allen, Mike Williams ended up getting cut / traded. That was like $60 million in cap space. Now I think they're literally the league's least expensive wide receiving core. Look at the importance priority on running backs nowadays. Look at the defensive line, linebackers. It's just a different team entirely. So it's a new era. Jim Harbaugh effect is real. And you're seeing that from Joe Ortiz and the roster construction all the way down to the patches on the jerseys for best yapper.
Side note, it was great to see Daiyan Henley and Cam Hart be on the field for drills during the week. Mm-hmm. Daiyan obviously coming off of his offseason, or technically his injury that he suffered during last season, ended up getting rehab for that, so it was good to see him out there. Cam Hart, who did not end up participating in OTAs, had even said himself when he was at the podium that his timeline to come back was mandatory minicamp, and sure enough, it was. So it was great to see him out there. Then I wanted to talk about, just because we had Derwin James at the podium, and Jim Harbaugh talked about this, and Derwin kind of doubled down on it when people were asking about it. But the new patches that Jim Harbaugh was talking about that are now on every player's jersey, essentially talking about their accomplishments, much like last year, where it was all the accomplishments were on the lockers. Now they're on the jerseys. Jim Harbaugh talked about, it's like, yeah, it kind of reminds me of a general having all of those, badges of honor and, on the uniform. Derwin, why I brought this up was because obviously Jesse Minter is going to deploy Derwin James much in the same fashion that he did last year. That was their goal, to get him back to the 2018 Derwin that we had not seen for the last couple of years, and it was mission accomplished. But you take into account now there's been some new additions to that secondary, albeit 2 free agent cornerbacks. Now you're mixing in with your 2 fifth-round picks in Tyler Tart and, not Tyler Tart. Jesus, here we go. There it is. Tarheeb Still. There's my flub. I was waiting for it.
Cam Hart. There you go.
Cam Hart and Tarheeb Still. Sorry. But it was interesting, the packages that specifically Daniel Popper was talking about when they had them in team drills. So with Cam Hart that was back on the field, he said the defensive back rotation started to come into form. So when Derwin James was a nickel, you had Tony Jefferson and Alohi Gilman were at safety. And it was Dante Jackson and Tarheeb Still that were on the outside. Hart and Benjamin St. Juste were on the second team outside cornerbacks. And then you had Tarheeb Still getting work in the slot. It's just going to be so interesting again, and more specifically for cornerbacks like Jackson and St. Juste, who were brought in because they were better marks in zone coverage for Jesse Minter's defense. Just to see that extra layer of things develop now with, again, Derwin James is basically going to pace how this secondary goes. But how are you going to continue to mix him in? Just the versatile chess piece evolution that is Derwin James. I was very interested to see, because that was going to be a question in terms of what happens come training camp. Who is going to be the starting outside corner, essentially, if you had those type of packages where Tarheeb Still was going to be your nickel defender in the slot, and who is going to come outside with Cam Hart? And early indication are that Dante Jackson is the leader for that role as it stands right now. Things could change, but we'll see.
Yeah, and Dante Jackson was talked about by Jesse Minter with like the production he had, the interceptions he's had over his career, and kind of that ball hockey mentality. He's just a good fit for this Chargers team is looking for archetype wise. And you think about, right, like you have to give this Chargers staff the benefit of the doubt, given what happened last year, right? With the players they had, how good this defense was, especially in the secondary, corners and safeties. It's hard to not think that, all right, well, now they had more money to spend, right? They're able to go get guys that maybe were better than they were anticipating being able to get last year. And now maybe some guys are healthier, right? And it's kind of fun to think about, okay, well, what if we give Jesse Minter a little bit more? What if we give Steve Klingscale a little bit more, right? Like, sure, you let go of Asante Samuel Jr., who basically didn't play last year, who's still a free agent, by the way. You let go of Christian Fulton because he got paid, which good for him. But look who you brought in. And look who's healthy. Look who's on the team, right? You kept Elijah Molden, which is huge, versatile, safety, DB, kind of Swiss Army knife. Cam Hart, the only thing with him is just staying on the field and being healthy. Tari Steele looks like an absolute steal. St. Juice, Jackson. St. Juice, we'll see. Jackson, I think, is going to be a stud with this Chargers team. And then you still got just your Taylor, Dean Leonard. Like, you're still a bunch of dudes there. So don't forget about the UDFA. Jake, your guy. What's his name again? I forget.
Oh, Nico Reed.
There he is.
See, I can remember that name.
Good job. Good job. So, no, I mean, it's hard not to get excited, right? Like, it's hard not to. Now, will it come through when it actually matters? You know, when the Chargers actually start playing? I'm not sure. Thoughts on Quentin Johnston and some of the stuff you see from him? I mean, we've seen, it's kind of funny because you've seen, I thought about making a graphic of like all of the guys with hands, right? You're seeing like this image for folks watching. Aronde Gadsden has like ridiculous catch during OTAs or during minicamp. You're seeing like Tre Harris with a crazy catch. Obviously, you know, Lad McConkey. You see even Brendan Rice has ridiculous catch that you saw in traffic. You're seeing Quentin Johnston, same thing with these nice hand catches. Are you there yet? Or is it similar to like a Justin Herbert in the playoffs where like until he wins a playoff game, doesn't matter. Until Quentin Johnston has big catches in big games, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think it was Sanjay Lal that alluded to this, that guys like KLS and Tre Harris are coming up to speed. Whereas, even as Daniel Popper alluded to, in practice, the Chargers were still going veteran heavy in the starting offense for minicamp this week. So Quentin Johnston, even Jalen Reagor, for example, were getting a lot of reps with the starting unit. Tre Harris and KLS, or obviously KLS specifically, was coming off of, I don't even think that he ended up participating in OTAs just a couple weeks ago.
Nope.
But again, I think it's their goal to get them up to speed by the time that they hit training camp, get ready for the preseason, that they're going to be in a better spot that they are now. So I'm not going to take too much of what took place at mandatory minicamp this week. I still believe when it's all said and done, by the time that we get to week one, Mike Williams, Tre Harris on the outside, Lattleman in the slot, and in certain packages, Quentin Johnston will be your pseudo wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 as it relates to where the starting offense goes. Because you know you can't just have Mike Williams be your downfield option and have that be it. So there will be I believe there will be a healthy rotation at some point between Tre Harris and KLS.
But that's exciting. Sure. That's the exciting part, though, is like, you know, heading into the draft, you're wondering, all right, like, is it just going to be Mike Williams downfield? Like, Is it him and maybe Darius Davis? You know, maybe it's Brendan Rice, you know? And, I mean, they said the hell with that. Like, they brought a couple tight ends, at least 3 receivers plus UDFAs. I mean, like, they stacked up for Justin.
They even had Willie Snead out there for a tryout.
Shout out
during mini camp.
Didn't have that on my bingo card. So I think that we have to get to this kind of calm before the storm 3.0, right? Training camp starts here, I think, in a couple of weeks, about a month. Any storylines as we move forward, other than the Rashawn Slater extension, that we should think of? Maybe a new free agent brought in? Like, is there really anything else that we're bracing for?
I mean, I would never discount the idea of the Chargers bringing in an outside free agent, especially when you get towards the end of training camp. They did that last year with Elijah Molden. They made that trade after preseason was essentially done before week one. You saw how that paid off. So I will definitely not put that idea out the window. If there is an opportunity for them to get better at a certain position and a specific player becomes available, keep that in mind for sure. But the wide receiver position, once the pads come on, you'll get a better idea of what Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris are going to bring to this unit, because it's tough to really evaluate them when they don't have pads on. But again, not to say that they're not going to be great, but you just get a better idea of it when they're able to actually hit somebody that's not in a Chargers jersey, which would be nice. So, Dan, the defensive line rotation is going to be interesting. You heard Jesse Minter talk about Tuli, Khalil Mack talk about Tuli, big expectations for him. He went as far as to say, I will not be surprised when he gets to the point where he's a 10 to 12 sack type of player. Interior of the defensive line, it seems like right now that Deshaun Hand has the upper hand in terms of the being part of that starting unit.
Deshaun has the upper hand. I like that. I like that. Good job.
And then the secondary unit, how's it all going to play out? It seems like if there's one position that may actually have pretty much put itself in stone, believe it or not, I think it's tight end. As we move forward, I think that all of this Oronde Gadsden talk is just going to keep going up and up and up and up. So that might be the one position that you could say, yeah, that may have been solidified in OTAs and mandatory minicamp. Go figure.
Yeah, and for those listening, tuning in still on YouTube and anywhere you find your podcast, the theme here is kind of just hitting as many things as we can in about a 35-minute mark. And we're getting close to the end here. Jake, I think a couple things. Junior Colson was talked about. We'll see how much he can be bringing to this second year season of his, given the kind of the setbacks he had last year with the health. Lots talked about there previously. I mean, it's wild. And I think you have to take a step back and appreciate the depth of this team, right? And you think about key position groups. You think about the depth that they have at corner. Do they have that tier one guy? I'm not sure, but I don't know if they necessarily need one. Would it be nice? Of course. But we'll see what Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart could be this year. Safety. I mean, that safety room you'd put up against any other safety room in the NFL. It's
pretty good.
Tight end room looks pretty good. Running back room looks damn good. Quarterback, check. Offensive line, we'll see. We'll see. But like for the most part, I would say at least above average.
You got 3/5 of your offensive line pretty much set in stone.
You know how many teams would be begging for that? Like that's not bad, right? Tight end group looks pretty good. Linebacker group looks pretty good. Edge group, you got Tuli and Khalil. Like that's pretty well-rounded team. It's not top heavy, right? It's not thin. It's not super expensive. They got money to spare. They're pretty young. That's a good position to be in as a franchise. So I think you have to take your hat off to Joe Ortiz and Jim Harbaugh for just like getting this ship turned around, given where it was when they started. Jake, anything else before we jump out of here?
Quick, just little note of basically one of the first things that you talked about when the show started, the Rashawn Slater contract extensions, I believe, as far as people worried about that getting done, I think we can put that to bed. Sean Slater said himself he is not worried about it whatsoever. Going all the way back to when we got a chance to speak with Rashawn at the tailgate down in San Diego when he was out there publicly. I asked him about that as a possibility for his contract getting done. He wasn't worried about it then. Doesn't sound like he's worried about it now. There's no indications that there is any issues with him showing up to mandatory minicamp, obviously. So I expect that contract to be in ink in probably was a week before training camp starts at the most.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you like to see your leaders lead. And you're seeing Rashawn Slater out there with his guys. Derwin James has been an absolute menace, right? Justin Herbert's been lethal in red zone and just about everywhere. Joe Alt looks like an absolute madman in year 2. You're seeing Daiyan Johnson looking bulk. That's no news there. We'll see what it can translate to off the field, or on the field, excuse me. Leaders lead by example. And you see a lot of the leaders, Khalil Mack, right? Like you see some of the stories with him and Tarheeb Still. There's just so much there that you are thankful for that this Chargers team has and what it could possibly bring. Tough schedule this coming year, and we'll get to it. But if this team could sneak into the postseason, given the headwinds that they have, watch out. If they can beat half the teams that are playoff teams, you're feeling good as a Chargers fan. So, Jake, this was fun. This was quick, rapid fire. I appreciate you, my friend. Chargers fans, I appreciate you as well. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like and subscribe. Helps us out a ton. Jake, it might be too hot for you this weekend to wear the hoodie after like 11 o'clock. So
on my house, it didn't.
I ain't even going to mention the color of your wall because we've had enough of that from Bob from Boston. But I am getting kind of hungry, so soup might be in my future.
It's not, but
we love you. I know.
Good try.
It's all love. For Jake, Dan, this is the Chargers Unleashed. We'll talk to you soon on the next Chargers Unleashed.